Welcome to the Scott and Holland podcast. Back season 10 of this show. I tried to do too much navel gazing here. Too much. Like it's about Houston Cougar sports, not about the Scott and Holland podcast. It's not about us, other than very peripherally. And I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, I didn't think we'd make it 2 episodes. Like, I think when you and I, Dustin, made the commitment to do this thing after we got over the hump of like, oh hey, the lost 2015 week 1 preview episode that wasn't. Once we got past that, I was like, okay, I think we could do a season of this or something like a season of that, which is I think the best description of our first season of trying to do this podcast. But I don't know if I envisioned 10 seasons.
It certainly was a season.
It certainly was. It was our first season. It was certainly our first.
It was a season.
But again, my point being, I didn't have like really negative, like, oh, we'll barely make it this. I was like, no, I think we can make it at least a few episodes here. Making it 10 seasons, I think, is really cool and is a testament to you, Dustin, my longtime co-host here, Bobby, friend who has joined us here in the last couple seasons. I think I added a nice new dimension to the show. So really excited to be here. We are in a month where Cougar sports is going to be happening, like multiple Cougar sports. That's really exciting. I feel like
there's a Cougar exhibition tomorrow.
There's a Cougar exhibition tomorrow. Am I getting it right? Like the first Saturday falls on the 31st, right? I'm remembering that correctly.
We
will have Cougar football. We will have Cougar football this month. We have Cougar soccer this month. We have Cougar volleyball. And we are going to be discussing, like we do at the start of the season, at least more recent seasons, we are going to be reviewing our predictions from last year and making at least one bold prediction for every varsity sport that the University of Houston fields at the collegiate level, which I'm always really excited about. A great curtain opener to the season. He is now in retired mode. If you're not watching, just assume he is freshly tanned. He's wearing one of those probably AI generated boomer shirts you see, referencing how they're retired now. He's looking very well rested. Dustin, it feels like it's been 6 days since I last talked to you on this show. Like, it really, time does fly. How are you doing, friend?
I'm doing great. Glad to be guest hosting the Scott and Holman podcast here. Appreciate you guys letting me come on and talk.
Joining Jeremy Branham and who else? Yeah. Who else is? I guess Bobby. At one point.
Bubba Maxwell. One time.
Maxwell as well. Yeah, former Cougar pitcher Bubba Maxwell.
One-time guest host of the podcast, came over to our house randomly and hosted. I don't know how that happened, but it did. It was a good time. Jeremy came over to our house at the time.
It was the 5th episode because I had a scheduled vacation to Missouri, and you and Jerry Branham jumped on in the middle of the 2015 season. That's kind of a fun memory.
Jeremy Branham, eternally a friend of the podcast for those reasons. We'll forever stick up for Jeremy. But no, good to be here talking to you guys. I always really, really enjoy the bold predictions. One of my absolute favorite episodes of the podcast calendar. So that's why, even as I am, if you listen to the very end of our last episode, no longer a full-time host of the Scott Holland podcast, I wasn't going to miss this one. So excited to go through our old predictions and do a little look backwards at the year that was, and good way to kind of mark the transition for the season, because you get to look back at the last athletics year, look forward to the next one in every sport. So can't wait to jump into it.
I have no funny wind up, Bobby. How you doing this week, friend?
Wonderful, buddy. Just getting ready to move. It's packing season at the house. You can see my U of H Robertson Stadium signs are down. All my little quirky little pictures are down. My Donnie Avery over this shoulder. Oh, man, it's mirrored. I'm messing it all up. My Donnie Avery painting that is signed by Donnie Avery is taken down. My softball first season signed poster taken down as well. Just getting ready to go to the new place. Super excited for it. So ready to take a break from packing and talk some wild predictions for the Houston Cougars.
As somebody who has made the inexplicable decision to move several times in the dead of Texas summer, Godspeed. Friend. Godspeed on that one.
I said I don't care what movers cost. I will be paying for them. So
yeah.
So they come, they pick up my stuff, they throw it in the apartment that will have everything situated, and we will call it a day. My parents are coming up, help me unpack, and hopefully I'll be ready to go by the next day.
Solid. Get our housekeeping here at the top. We got to mention our good friends at Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com. On the World Wide Web, longtime sponsors of the show. I am wearing the Houston Cougar Charlie Hustle football helmet shirt here today. Very comfortable to commemorate the Cougar football season that is going to be happening this month. Fantastic Cougar basketball merch as well as part of that Charlie Hustle collection. Incredibly comfortable vintage collegiate apparel. Great Big 12 selection, general college and pro sports selection as well. Please use our promo code PAWD15, PAWD15, and go to charliehustle.com and use our promo code and support some friends of the show. Also, a first time here for the little business at the top. I'm going to selfishly mention a new project here, the Third Ward Racket Club, little merch store supporting Houston Cougar tennis. Quick backstory. I don't want to chew up too much this episode talking about this, but kind of as Bobby and I and you, Dustin, as well, kind of talked about the depressing end to the last Cougar tennis season, kind of got the juices going in my brain, just like, can I do something more than just talk about a Houston Cougar sport on the show? Can I use power's not the right word? Can I use something that I've done a decent amount of and have some experience at for a purpose other than just complaining about bad results? Can I help make something better? And I think the combination of that train of thought and U of H making a just saying because she was there, an outstanding hire in Kat Adamovich, a hire that was a more serious hire than I thought U of H would actually make for the position, I think motivated me to start Third Ward Racket Club, where 100% of the profits from your merch sales go back to Houston Cougar Tennis. I'm going to be donating some of my money on a monthly basis towards it as well, just to do my little part to help, I think, Cougar Tennis, a program that has often been overlooked, that U of H has now shown serious interest, I think, in being some level of good at. I think, if you're like me, like I have 2 football season tickets. I go to men's basketball whenever I can make it back to Houston. I am not the kind of donor that will ever get the personal attention from Kelvin Sampson or Willie Fritz, and that's fine. I don't have enough money to get those guys very valuable time. Like, I should be donating a lot more money to do that. If you're like me, and you're probably never going to be in that tax bracket, but you want to support a Cougar sport where your dollar goes a long way, support Third Ward Racket Club. I'm going to, in the description of this show, put the link to our merch store. We're going to have a more official website and stuff. We were just getting started. Our good friend Bill, recent F1 off-topic pod guest co-host, Bill, the guy who designed all the pretty stuff you're looking at, if you are watching this video, other than the Charlie Hustle logo, designed some really cool merch, hats, hoodies, shirts, all that good stuff. So support Third Ward Racket Club. Probably not the last time I mentioned here, but certainly the first time as well. Guys, obviously bold predictions are the centerpiece of this podcast tonight, but we got some current Cougar news to talk about, don't we, Dustin?
Yeah, let's jump into it.
Let's go.
All right. So first news, I think tonight we're going to start with the football news such as it exists, which was a pretty big schedule update. We got some clarity on U of H's future non-conference football scheduling, some confirmation officially that we will still be getting the Bayou Bucket game, obviously, in the coming season. We're not going to change that a month out from the game. And also for 2025, but that game will now no longer be happening for the 2026 and 27 seasons. Also, future games against SFA in 25 and Prairie View A&M in 27 were confirmed as well. I'll start off here and pass it to you guys. My thoughts on this aren't super straightforward. I've seen in the past a train of thought from some U of H fans that the game with Rice doesn't add any value. They don't care about the game, that people don't care about the Bayou Bucket game. And I don't believe that's true. I think if anything, Rice winning the game last year gave actually this year's game a little bit more juice. And the fact that there aren't 2 closer Division I FBS schools in the country, I think it would just bother me on a purely logical level with this sport as divorced as it is from local and regional rivalries, that U of H would stop playing and Rice would stop playing forever. Like talking like a politician here, but I guess I want my position to be unambiguous. I do not want the Bayou Bucket game to go away for good. I want to see the game played again sometime after the 2025 season, but I think this is where I wholeheartedly agree with one of my co-hosts here. Giving Rice a 1-1 home and home is terrible fucking business. And when the other school in the arrangement brings as few fans to the game as Rice, I guess my first thought, Dustin, before I pass it off to you, I understand why U of H, if U of H was the driving force here, which it sounds like it very much was, I understand why U of H did what they did here.
Yeah, I think it is a clear dollars and cents decision, and I think that, follows nicely from, look, for a couple months ago, whenever it was that we fired our athletics director and made the whole, pitch about, hey, we've got to start taking the financial aspect a little bit more seriously here. We can't continue to be both the school with the, smallest operating budget in the P4 and also the school with maybe one of, if not the largest school subsidies in the P4 as well. And this is, I think, a step towards that. And yeah, just it makes absolutely zero financial sense to just continue doing a home and home. Yeah, with the where the road game is, okay, the road game is whatever. You're not going to make any money off the road game. And then the home game is one where the again, every year Rice brings fewer fans across every time they've ever played at U of H. Rice brings fewer fans across town to watch them play U of H than basically any traveling team that has to come from outside of the city or outside of the state does. So it's just not a game that is going to benefit you in terms of the, tickets at the door and the extra concessions and things like that. It's not like the U of H Rice game every year is on the ESPN mothership where the national viewership is so locked into this local rivalry that we just have to have it, that you're gonna get some big TV payday for having this game. That doesn't appear to be the case from what I've seen. And yeah, I mean, I guess I would agree with you, Sam, that the game this year has a little bit more juice because Rice beat us last year. But if Rice hadn't beat us last year, would this game have any juice at all this year? I mean, and this is kind of what I said on Twitter. It's like, yeah, when you're in the American Athletic Conference, playing Rice makes sense more because that is a game that fans care about somewhat. And other than maybe like SMU or whatever, you just don't really have another Texas school that you maybe have kind of a natural rivalry with, or that you're going to play every year or play regularly enough to kind of develop that rivalry. We've got Baylor, Texas Tech, and TCU.
None of their rivals.
I appreciate that none of them are in state, and I appreciate that, yes, none of them are quote unquote traditional rivals with U of H. Who's to say what that'll look like 10, 20 years from now if we've been in the same conference with them for a couple decades? I think, time plays into those things, certainly. But I don't know. Are fans really like that? Like, oh man, I needed that Rice game to really like get me amped up for like a local in-state. I don't know. Like, to me, the game importance just when you're in the American and it's like Rice and a bunch of anonymous whatever American teams. Yeah, that Rice game is probably near the high of your list in terms of, how much juice do I have for this game relative to other ones? Again, if you're playing a bunch of Big 12 teams that actually move the needle for people, we're in a conference full of teams that move the needle for me and for, I think, the majority of U of H fans more than Rice does at this point. That's, again, sure, it's there are traditional rival, whatever. I get that, but I don't think that the rivalry is either A, so integral to U of H football that we like have to have it. B, it's not financially, useful. And I don't know what the reason is there to keep this game on the schedule. I don't know. And again, it reminds me of us leaving the Southwest Conference. And yeah, we probably, as of 1996, could have legitimately said that we had rivalries with Texas Tech and TCU and the Baylor, the teams in the Southwest Conference. I bet the fans in 1996 thought we had rivalries with those teams. None of them were like, oh, we've got to keep this great local rivalry in state on the schedule and just play them every year, no matter what, no matter how few U of H fans would have probably traveled to those games because our athletic department was kind of in shambles at that point in time. But
we're not the best traveling fan base either. We're better now, but not
sure.
The best historically.
But whatever the case may be. And again, no one's doing anybody charity at this point in time. That's what it would be to keep playing Rice home and home every year without some sort of differential, money sharing arrangement where it's, one game at U of H where U of H keeps the gate receipts, one game at Rice where Rice does, and then one game at NRG every third year where U of H gets 75% of them. I don't know. Again, I would need to see the exact numbers to figure out what would make that a good decision. But it's just if the only option that Rice is willing to agree to is a home and home, and based on everything I've read is that this was the teams mutually agreed to end the series, which kind of sounds like they couldn't come up with an agreement that worked for U of H financially and that worked for Rice financially, or Rice's pride for not wanting to have it be anything other than home and home. I don't know, but. Yeah, so again, this has all kind of been a long way of saying, yes, theoretically, I would like to have Rice on the schedule, but no, I don't think that U of H needs to do anything to financially compromise itself to make that happen.
I think I can see your point. Like, yeah, I think it's great that, when we were in the American, and sure, this game meant more when we were in the American, but now we play Tech and there's more teams that there are teams that I'll get more excited to play in the Big 12. Like, yeah, no shit. Like, of course I'm going to be more excited to play Baylor and TCU and teams like that. Like, yeah, obviously. But like, would I rather play Rice or would I rather play Prairie View or SFA? I'd rather play Rice every year. It's a stupid trophy, but give me the trophy game. And I know we can hear the argument that they bring, I know Rice doesn't bring anybody, but does SFA bring that much more money than Rice does, right? And sure, this opens you up to allow you to have more games, but you're paying SFA to come to your arena. You're paying SFA to come to TDECU. You're paying Prairie View to come to the school. if you have something with Rice, you still get the trophy game. It's still, is it the most exciting thing in the world? No, there are games that I'm going to get much more excited about over the next years. Hell, I'm more excited to play Oklahoma this year. But, like, I still like watching us play Rice. To Sam's point, they're the two closest schools in FBS to each other. There's something to that. I don't think that it's this... I don't think the reason why this program is tops in... why this athletic department is tops in subsidies from the school and the lowest funded P4 school in the country. I don't think it's because we play Rice. I think it's because we gave extensions to coaches who didn't do a good enough job to deserve an extension, and we have to buy them out.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'd rather see something like Rice than SFA. I'm not saying, like, if we want to talk financially, again, we don't know the financials. Is it better? There's probably a reason why we did it. And I would much rather, I would prefer U of H get a 2-for-1 out of Rice rather than a 1-1-1, right? Like, but if I'm gonna, my ideal schedule is a P5, a G5, and then maybe you throw in another, you get a P5, maybe a FCS team, something like that. I don't see why you can't do some kind of rotation with Rice, UTSA, or something like that, but keeping Rice on the schedule more often than not, to me, is more preferable. One of the biggest knocks I have as a U of H fan on U of H is we don't have any rivalries. We lost it during the breakup of the Southwest Conference. We at least have Rice. We can at least play them, and the game's going to have at least a little bit of juice no matter what, just because coaches will get excited for it, even if we start beating them every year, right? There are plenty of programs that P5 programs that play lower P5 program or P4 programs that play lower P4 programs or G5 programs that they just play because it's just kind of what they do, right? It's just, I mean, how many times can Georgia and Georgia Tech play? Sure, it's great. I'm not saying we're at the level of, I'm not saying Houston Rice is Georgia Tech in terms of history or anything like that, but it's going to bring something more so than an SFA game or a Prairie View game is in terms of the fan experience and in going to the game and doing that kind of stuff.
I just want to jump in real quick. I mean, I don't think U of H is in the poorhouse, so to speak, because we play Rice in football too often. But I think we are in the poorhouse, so to speak, at least partially because of the kind of thinking that gets you playing Rice every year. The like, well, it's for our friends. Yeah, we've been terrible at women's basketball. Let's extend this coach some more. We like him. We've been terrible at softball. Let's give Dana this ridiculous extension. He's our buddy. Again, you'd be doing charity for Rice, and you cannot be in the mindset of doing charity for anybody, not your coaches, not the school across town, if they can't make it at least somewhat worth your while. Again, yeah, if we never play Rice in the next 10, 15 years after this series, after the next couple, will I be a little bit mad at U of H that they didn't find out a way to make it work? Sure. Should we be playing them 4 years in a row where 2 of those games are at Rice in a 4-year span? Hell no. We should not be playing 2 games at Rice every 4 years when we have 3 non-conference games in football to try to maximize, all of, not only getting your team ready, but also trying to make some money as well. And I think, it's the Big 12 has made it clear to their member schools that they're with a 9-game schedule, their ideal non-conference is a P4, a G5, and an FCS. And I think there's a reason why. And people are like, I don't like playing. It's just Prairie View. It's just SFA. What do you learn? You don't necessarily learn a lot. What you do is you get a chance for a bunch of your young guys to go out there and get some reps. You get a game where you don't have anyone getting injured, probably, hope, knock on wood, because your starters are out early, whatever. You have a game that you don't have to worry about whether or not because again, Rice has showed U of H is going to beat them more often than not, but Rice just showed they can beat us. So it's not a gimme game for sure. So, and again, yeah, like I said, I don't want to see the Rice game go away. I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying about there is something there. They are the closest FBS teams. There is a rivalry. 100%. You got to put them on the schedule at least sometimes. I do not want to see the Bayou Bucket go away. But like I said, just also completely not interested in twisting ourselves into bad situations and putting ourselves, because 3 non-conference games, you don't know how the Big 12 schedule is going to jump back and forth necessarily. I don't think that's locked in stone. So I know like one of the years that they canceled, the game that was going to be the second next game at Rice, was they had another game that was going to be away from campus. If you end up with four of your 9 Big 12 games at home that year, all of a sudden you only have 5 total home games. You're, financially, you're going to take a huge loss from that compared to if you were able to put all your, full accompaniment of season tickets out there. So I think we're kind of agreeing more than we're disagreeing here, even though we're kind of disagreeing, which is just that, like I said, I do want to see Rice on the schedule sometimes. Don't need it to be every year. Do want it to be in such a way that it benefits U of H financially.
Yeah, the only other thought I had is something you kind of just touched on there, Dust, is that FCS games, not really exciting. I very much am in the camp of someone who's just like, don't have much interest in them. Like, we'll watch as much as I need to watch to talk on this show about U of H football, but like, I do not seek them out in any way unless U of H is involved. And it really, really quick aside, biggest pet peeve is, we follow a lot of different fan bases out there, and it's cool. Like, I love the number of different people, the breadth of experience Dustin and I and Bobby more recently have had over the years, and got to, meet all sorts of people I might not have otherwise. But if I could just auto mute anyone, just, oh wow, we're looking, the run game is looking really good. And it's like, brother, you are playing North Carolina Central. Like, don't fucking spam my timeline with this shit. But it's necessary. But where you are now in this conference, it's necessary. It's necessary to have that game where you get a look at a lot of your young guys, your backups, your redshirt candidates. Like right now in this much more difficult league, as U of H is a lesser resourced football program in that much more difficult league, you need the FCS game. As much as PV and SFA don't excite us, that game is a necessary evil for this program right now. That's the only other point I had on this. I think I fall in the middle of where you guys are on this U of H Rice, and I think we all to differing degrees and had different opinions, wanting to see that game still happen at some point in the future again. Yeah. Sticking with Cougar news here before we get to our predictions, some Cougs were in the Olympics. Start with the track and field guys here. A couple of names we've talked about on the show a few times: Sean Maswanyani and Louis Inchliff. Competed for South Africa and Great Britain respectively. You're still competing, but have competed so far. Both made it to the 100-meter dash semifinals. Inchliff, I believe, ran a faster time than the eventual gold medalist Noah Lyles in his quarterfinal heat. Despite running a 9.97 second time in the semifinals, Louis just missed the cut to make it to the finals. Maswanyani also made the semifinals in the 200, finished third in his heat, running a time of 20.2 seconds. Both guys, Sean and Louis, will be competing as part of their nation's 4x1 relays. Those events begin on Thursday at the bright and early time. I think Dustin, you'll be the only one of the three of us for sure up around this time at 4:35 a.m. Central Time on Thursday. If you out there want to put on a pot of coffee and start your day with some Olympic track and field, those were the two big ones for me. Dustin, who have you been following these Olympic games?
No, yeah, just like kind of same as you. Excited to see Sean and Louis out there. I know both got to the semifinals, both came up a little short of making the 100-meter finals, but wanting to see them keep doing well, but mostly just excited to see so many Cougs and broader Texans, Houstonians doing well in the Olympics.
Yeah, also going to mention really quick the women's side. Cecilia Tamayo Garza from Mexico competed in the 100 and 200, finished fifth in her heat in the 100 last Friday, finished fifth. And I learned how this is pronounced, guys. The repechage round Monday in the 200 after originally finishing seventh in her heat. Tristan Evelyn competing for Barbados also finished sixth in her heat in the 100-meter quarterfinals. And also Alondra Ortiz and Elizabeth Jimenez competed for Costa Rica and Dominican Republic respectively. Ortiz in the 200 butterfly, Elizabeth Jimenez in the 100 backstroke. Didn't get out of their heats, but I think worth repeating. Pretty incredible. They both got to represent their countries in Paris with a lot of time left in their college career, not to mention their career generally. So, guys, I think that covers the U of H news that was. You ready for some bold predictions?
Let's do it.
Go.
All right, I'm going to start us off here with the first calendar sport to start, or first sport on the calendar to start this season, Cougars women's soccer. Our question last year, Dustin, I'm assuming as the once and future guy who organizes this thing, we're going to go talk about what we predicted right and wrong last year first before we get to the current year. Is that good with you? Cool.
Yes.
Last year we asked, will Houston win 2.5? Is it over under 2.5 Big 12 games out of 10? Dustin said over. Bobby and myself said under. Bobby and myself were correct in this one. The Cougars won 2 games. They went 2-7-1 in conference play last year. Not the most exciting mark there. For the coming season, we're ready to get hurt again, guys. Will Cougar soccer win at least 3 Big 12 matches this coming season. I'm going to answer this first. My initial answer in this, guys, was actually was false, but I'm going with true. I am not very confident of more than 3. Actually, originally answered false, and then I went back and looked at how close last year's Cougar soccer team was to winning 3. Like they dropped far more than 3 wins from winning positions in the second half, and still managed to win 2 last season, plus the tie at TCU. My bigger picture concerns this program under Jaime Frias remain, but I think this team has 3 wins in them. If this was an over under 4, I would be emphatically saying false here, but I'm going to go true. Bobby, what are you thinking?
I have us winning at least 3 games as well. Sorry, I got to grab my notes here. 2 last year, you do return your top 2. You do return your top 2 scores, so there's some confidence building in there. You do miss the 2 teams who finished below you this year, which is a little concerning, but I feel like with the 2 scores returning, you got a good shot at it. Another year of development will lead to some better things, hopefully. And like Sam, I'm going to go with the over, and I do think they win at least 3 games. It may only be 3, but I do see 3 coming. Dustin?
All right. Well, I'm excited. I'm going to be going third. Just a little. We said beforehand that we're gonna, as a little gimmick this year, because I picked most of these. I wrote most of these questions. I said I'm going to go third, and if you guys agree, I will necessarily pick the opposite answer as you guys. Also, I want to throw out a caveat up front, because I feel like this happens every year. So I just want to get this out of here. Anytime we pick U of H to do poorly in a sport, we pick them not to make it. We hope that we're wrong. We're going to
hope we're wrong so bad.
So just one blanket up front. We hope we're wrong if we pick U of H to do poorly, and we'll try not to say it 100 times throughout the episode. That said, I actually didn't have to change my answer, because I already had U of H not winning 3 Big 12 matches this year. In soccer, looking at the schedule, your most winnable games, I think, are probably like at Cincinnati, at Oklahoma State, home versus Arizona, at Utah, and home versus West Virginia, who Houston beat last year. But I think outside of those 5, I don't see them winning their other games. And of those 5, 3 of them are on the road. So I just have a hard time seeing U of H pick up 3 W's out of that list. Hope I'm wrong. This is one of the easier conferences in terms of how good the Big 12 is. The Big 12 is not that great at women's soccer. So really, this is a sport that there's no excuse for U of H to not be doing at least kind of okay in the Big 12, because it's just not, there's a lot of kind of middling teams there. Whereas, most sports, it's not really the case. So, I feel like there's plenty of opportunity for U of H to prove me wrong and get 3 wins, but I'm not going to predict that they do. Bob, you want to take us to the next sport, volleyball?
I will. So last year we talked about volleyball. We actually had 2 questions for volleyball this last year. Number 1 was, will Houston finish in the top 4 in the Big 12 standings? Dustin and I were correct by saying yes. Sam said no. And luckily for us, Dustin, they tied for 4th place. So we get the point there. Go us. And then the second question was, will Houston improve on last year's 249 hit percentage? All 3 of us agreed and said no. And they just missed it by hitting 246. So this year we have, will U of H win a match in the NCAA tournament? And I'll start and I will say, I think we will win a match in the NCAA tournament. You do lose 2 of your best players, but this is very much I have faith in the coach play, right? Like, it's going to have, until we don't, I will believe that we will, if that makes sense. So, can this team continue to be a top 15 team? And if they can, if you believe they can, top 15 teams, top 20 teams win in the first round of the NCAA tournament. They win matches in the NCAA tournament. So I believe that they will win one in the tournament. Sam?
Yeah, getting past that, I also answered true to this. Getting past that first round, I think is hard if you're not the host. I'm not 100% sure. I think this team could be, but if I had to guess, they'll probably be just below the cut line of being a regional host kind of team. And yeah, Kenneth Sauer, Abby Jackson, Rachel Tullis were all capital G great players for this program. The kinds of players you do not easily replace. I think fans should remember that. But like you, Bobby, I believe this is a team that'll be tested by the crucible that is Big 12 volleyball. And I think until I see otherwise, I'll expect this team to at least be the caliber of team that can dispatch the teams you tend to face in the first round when you're a top 25, top 30 kind of team. Excited to see Dustin to put on your full forensic guy hat and like make the negative case here on the fly. Because I'm going to guess you actually picked if this was truly like what Dustin believes you have picked true, but I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
So I put answers for every question. So if I change an answer, I will let you know. I do not have to change my answer here. I had false. I think there's a good argument to be made. The argument is Houston still has Kate Georgiadis, still has Annie Cook. That's about as good as a libero and a setter as many teams are going to have. I like some of the outside hitter transfers, but I see U of H taking a sizable step backwards in terms of the talent available at the outside hitter position. Also, I don't know if we even should be saying this. One of the biggest X factors for me was something, because I had a hard time coming up with my original answer, because someone kind of whispered in our DMs a few months back that I don't know if I should, that Kellen Moore had torn her ACL and was going to miss most if not all of the year. That, if that's true, that kind of like sways my answer one way or the other, if that's true or not, because I mean, she's a huge part of what I think Houston wants to be doing, as impressive as she was at middle blocker and as big a part of this team as we thought that she was going to be this year. So if she really is hurting, I think that is going to make it real hard for U of H, in addition to kind of losing, like I said, the outside hitter talent they did. Again, like some of the transfers coming in, just don't think they're at the level of what U of H had last year. And then we saw U of H already last year. It's hard to win matches in the NCAA tournament. It's a hard thing to do. So I said no. Really love the long-term trajectory of this program. You heard Coach Herrera. I've seen him give some quotes about some freshmen are going to be out there on the court this year, which I think bodes real well. When we had him on the podcast last, he talked about thinking that, recruiting is going to be taking a big uptick, I believe, starting this year. You can kind of recruit 2 years out with
first cycle that, yeah.
Right. So, I think long-term, we're going to see U of H not need to rely on the transfer quite as much as they did last year, and as they probably do again this year. So, I think this team's going to be back to regularly winning games in the NCAA tournament again. But my gut says this might be the year that our nice little 2-year streak of winning at least one game in the NCAA tournament that we've enjoyed very much. I just don't see this team as being quite as good as the last couple of years. Hope I'm okay. Dang it! I almost did it. You know what I mean.
You know the caveat that's coming here.
I don't want to be right, but here we go.
You make a case. All right, our first of two football things to kick around, Dustin. If you don't mind me jumping in here, we are looking at quarterback Donovan Smith's stats this year. Will Donovan Smith have it?
Let's do last year's first.
Oh, my bad.
And I would like to take a turn. I'll go ahead and read some here. I'll still go last, but I'll still read the questions here. So last year we had 2 football questions. They were who will lead U of H in rushing yards? Sam and Bobby both picked Stacy Sneed. I decided to be a rebel and pick the quarterback, Donovan Smith. None of us were right. It was Parker Jenkins, who had 464 yards to lead the team. Donovan Smith, I will say, was a pretty close second at 428, followed by Stacy Sneed in third there. And then our other football question was, will Houston win over or under 4.5 total games this year? Of course, Houston went 4-8 and went under. Bobby was the only of the 3 of us who was correctly pessimistic about the football team this year. So we got 2 football questions again. We'll just go ahead and take them one at a time. Once again, we've got an individual stats one and a overall team performance one. We'll start with the individual stats. And what we want to know is, will Donovan Smith have at least 15 more passing touchdowns than he has interceptions? Keep in mind, last year that number was 22 and 13. He was +9. So is he going to get to at least 15 this year? Sam, what do you think?
Again, I'll caveat this by saying not your favorite one that you mentioned earlier, but I think this year's scheme will use his toughness and what he's good at in a much more logical way than whatever Dana Holgorsen was trying to do last year. But I also saw Independent last year. By the way, sorry, false. Should have answered that false at the top. I saw Independent of scheme last year, though. Questionable decision-making from Smith that I don't think Willie Fritz and Kevin Barbet and the staff can entirely fix. So while I think his numbers will be better across the board and what U of H does offensively, in a bigger picture sense, will make more sense than most of what we saw last year, I'm not ready to say Smith, against what we all acknowledge is going to be a difficult schedule, will do as well as this question asks.
Yep, I sadly don't think that he does accomplish it, so I am going to be false here, putting Dustin on the spot yet again. It's really not about him being careless and throwing more interceptions or anything like that. I just don't see this offense getting enough passing touchdowns to get there. I think this offense is going to look a lot different, and we're going to see a lot more of Donovan Smith running. I think we're going to I could see his rush touchdowns increase, and all touchdowns being 15 15 more than interceptions and even fumbles, which was actually the case last year. If you look at his rushing touchdowns and his passing touchdowns, he was at exactly 15. I definitely could see that being the case again. Maybe something like 10 touchdowns rushing up from 6, passing touchdowns go to 20 from 22, and then the interceptions drop to something like 9 or 10. Just because I don't see us slinging the ball around as much. So I don't think he will do it, but not because I think he becomes, bad decisions, or I think we'll actually see a step forward from him in terms of decision making and things like that. I just don't see this offense getting enough touchdowns or getting enough passing touchdowns to get there.
All right, well, I love this. 3 for 3, you're putting me on the spot, and 3 for 3, I'm keeping my answers the way they were. I have him.
Nice.
Wow.
Donovan Smith is going to throw for at least 50 more passing touchdowns than he has interceptions. Not a whole lot of, I don't have a whole lot of backup on this one. This is kind of just a vibesy pick for me, other than I don't know. I just feel like I picked up on a lot of genuine enthusiasm from this coaching staff, Willing Fritz and Sean Bell's our quarterback.
Yes.
Sean Bell. Both of them just felt like some
Cougar.
Yeah, absolutely. Felt like was giving you opportunity there. But yeah, I feel like I felt some genuine enthusiasm from them in regards to having Donovan Smith on the roster when they came in. I don't know. I felt like they had an idea that what we saw from Donovan Smith last year, given the coaching staff that was here, was not what he is capable of. So I'm kind of holding out hope. It's kind of a gut feeling that Donovan Smith is going to have a surprising year, be a little more consistent, really look like he's coached up by some guys who have a little bit more recent track record of coaching up quarterbacks in a positive way than the last staff did. So I'm going true on this one. And then our second football question is: will Houston win at least three out of 9 Big 12 games in the regular season? Bobby, what you got on this answer?
I say no. I know we had the caveat. I want so bad to be wrong about this, but it's really not necessarily about the Cougars, and it's more about kind of where they play the games, right? You got TCU on the road, Kansas on the road. You have Arizona in Arizona, right? That suddenly becomes a little bit more difficult. You got to go play at Elevation in Provo. So some of the games that I think we could win, they're kind of on the road, and I don't see us going, super crazy and upsetting many teams on the road, right? You do get Baylor at home, which is nice. You get, but you got to host Kansas State. You have to host Utah. So your home game, you're hosting Iowa State. So I don't see it, only because of the home road split. Our hard games are kind of at home, and you'd like to see an easy opponent at home sometimes. So you got to go on the road to Cincy. So it's not that I necessarily don't think we have the talent. It's just some of our easy games are going to be on the road. You don't bring them in here. It just didn't seem like it worked out for the Cougar schedule this year.
Yeah, I think a lot of the same reasons as you. I may know false, whatever you want to call it, on this one. I think this team wins 2 conference games and 2 non-conference games this year. That's my general prediction. And I'll just say this, the only thing to have to add that's, I think, unique to what Bobby said here is there are 16 Big 12 football teams this year. And I don't think you will find any place that has U of H weaker than a top 4, top 5 schedule in the conference. It's like Bobby said, it's not just the opponents you're playing, but it's where you're playing them, the sequencing, all that stuff. It is a hard schedule for, a roster reset and a very different coaching staff here. It is not a friendly schedule. And not to give our last coach any grace, but his first year here, he got a brutally difficult schedule as well. Not a great one to try to first year and figure out a new situation. It is a timing thing. So yeah, I'm a no as well. Dust, I'm stoked to see what your answer to this is.
Yeah, good luck, buddy.
I'm so excited. 4 for 4, not having to change my answers because you guys are putting me on the spot. And I think I kind of said this a couple weeks ago.
Cougar football optimist Dustin.
I am a little bit on the Cougar football optimist train. And again, by optimist, I think we're going to win 3 Big 12 games and probably go 5-7, but not go to a bowl. So not that much of an optimist. But Baylor at home, I know they got some transfers, but after beating them on the road, I have a hard time not thinking we're going to beat Baylor at home.
They have Toledo's quarterback. Ooh, I'm so fucking sick. Sorry. That I've been seeing. They got a big one. It's cool. They got the max 4th best quarterback. Big fucking deal. Sorry, completely a tangent.
Very good. I'm picking us to win at Cincinnati. I know they smoked us at home last year, but I think U of H played several orders of magnitude worse than any football team that we're going to see U of H put out on the field this year. And I'm not that impressed with Satterfield. I think Houston wins at Cincinnati. I'm not going to pick the third game. I just say they sneak one other third game out of there that no one expects them to get. Maybe one of the other the good teams that comes to TDECU. I'm going to say U of H wins one other additional home game against one of either Iowa State, Kansas State, or I think Utah. I think those are the three. Would I pick U of H to win any of those three? No, I think U of H will sneak one of those three at home. That's all I'm throwing it out there. So I am loving the way that this is going. But yeah, no, I already had true. Houston will win at least 3 Big 12 games.
All right, so I will take us into men's hoops, I believe. And before we get into the current year's thing, recapping last year's 2 questions that we asked about Cougar men's basketball, we will be asking 2 this season as well. But last year's questions, the first one was, does LJ Cryer score more or fewer than 15 points per game? Dustin and myself said over. Bobby said under. Dustin and myself were right. LJ Cryer led the Cougars with 15.5 points per game, clearing the number you needed to clear. Also, we asked, will Houston win, more or less than 11.5 Big 12 games last year? Over under. Dustin said under. Bobby and I said over. Bobby and I were right. The Cougars went 15-3. We're going to do one more conceptual question and then one numerical one here as well. Start with the more conceptual one, though everything comes back to numbers in some way. Our question is, will U of H repeat or at least win a share of the Big 12 title next season?
Regular
season this year. So winners, take it or share it. I said false to this one. And again, picking against Houston Cougar men's basketball or Kelvin Sampson is something you should rarely do and only do at your own peril, like I am here. My answer isn't about any negativity I have towards the program, but this was a brutally difficult men's basketball league last year. And I think on the aggregate, you lose the 2 SEC schools, but I feel like adding Arizona only makes it that much more brutally difficult. I think we've seen other halves of the conference, which I don't share the offseason just, puzzlement about the hype of Kansas, Baylor, and Iowa State, who got noticeably better this offseason as well. I mean, this is a league where if 7 teams finish the top 25, I don't think anyone in the regular season would bat an eye. I think if any program can figure out how to be successful in the big picture after losing a guy like Jamal Shed, it's Houston Cougar men's basketball. But a program that still finishes top 3 or 4 in the country's best men's basketball league, which I think this team is going to be doing next year, I still think is by definition an incredibly good one. I think that's what U of H will be this year, but no, I do not think this team repeats as Big 12 champions in any form or fashion. Bobby?
Dustin, get ready because you get to give us your answer because I disagree with Sam. I absolutely think this team will at least have a share of the title. The team loses Jamal Shed. I'm not trying to downplay how important Jamal Shed was to this team, but they returned 4 starters off a really good team. And players like JoJo Tugler is only going to get better. Another year under Sampson, I see Tugler just getting even better. So I just see the development and yeah, Jamal Shed, massive, huge, right? 4 starters from a team that already won the championship. It's really hard for me to go against that. So this is another situation where I trust the coach. I'm going to bet on Kelvin Sampson all the time. So Dustin, what is your actual belief here? Let's go. Let's do it.
You know what the funny thing is for 4 questions, you guys have made me pick an answer, and it did not change my answer at all. And this time you guys did not make me pick an answer, and it did make me change my answer because after Sam answered, I realized I was really hoping you were also going to say false because I wanted you to force me to change my pick from false to true. And I realized that means I should just pick true. If that's what I want, that's what I should just do. So I'm going to say yes, Houston does win at least a share of the Big 12 regular season title. And I think Sam is right. Again, and the reason I put false is because you've got Kansas.
It's very hard to do.
Iowa State, Baylor, probably Arizona. 4 teams. I wouldn't want to bet against any one of those 4 teams heavily, like winning the national championship. Like that's how good all 4 of those other teams are. So just to say, oh, well, of course, Houston will at least win a share of a conference when you've got 4 other, I think, pretty legitimate national title contenders, at least a handful of other, borderline top 25 type of teams. I mean, there's just so many good teams. You can be a great team. Houston could win a national championship and not win the Big 12 this year. That would not be a wild, crazy thing to happen. That said, every time I see someone picking Kansas ranked over U of H or like picks Kansas first in their Big 12 rankings, I just want to be like, we won the conference by 2 games last year, right? Kelvin Sampson has never got 4 starters back in any of this like continually improving of this team, right? Like this looks like the deepest team Kelvin Sampson will ever have had at U of H if everyone just stays healthy in terms of guys that I think could legitimately go and play in the Big 12 right now. So you know what? I'm just a little bit ticked off. I can't do it. I can't say no on this one. So I will say true. Houston will at least win a share of the Big 12 regular season title.
I like it. I like the mid podcast audible. That's always fun. It should be something we shouldn't consider these things in the notes in front of us completely set in stone. We also asked about men's hoops. Will U of H win any conference player of the year award this season? That could be defensive player of the year, could be the general player of the year, could be also freshman and sixth man of the year as well. It doesn't have to be the conference
most improved and newcomer.
Most improved as well. So a lot of options there. I said yes. And I don't have the burden of proof here of saying exactly what, but I feel like there are enough guys like LJ Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp, who are 2 returning all conference caliber guards, Wani Robertson, incredibly valuable. And I would venture to guess incredibly respected by the Big 12 voting, the voting conglomerate as, a veteran guy who's been very critical at U of H does. And also I think the wild card here is what we've heard, which is really positive stuff. Granted, off-season whispers about Mercy Miller and what he looked like since coming into the building there on Cullen Boulevard. So I feel like any 4 of those guys, I feel like Terrence Arsenault could have, just like coming off the injury season, like what we've heard about him and how valuable he's been as well. That's 5 guys right there who I feel like to varying degrees can pick up one or, really great season, multiple guys winning the award. So I am an emphatic yes on this one. Bobby?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I wish I had a ton to add over what you did. There's enough talent on this team that somebody's going to win the award. Like, as one of the biggest Wani fans here, I could see him coming away with some kind of award next year. There's LJ Cryer could come back and win some awards. Like it would be silly, and something, in my opinion, catastrophic has happened if U of H doesn't come away with at least one of the awards. Why did I say rewards? Awards. I'm sorry.
I love it. The trend continues. You guys not making me change my pick, despite theoretically making me change my pick. I said false on this one, and I just kind of walked through it.
Wow.
Player of the year, I think U of H is going to be a little bit too balanced of a team to have the individual player of the year this year. I just see that coming from a team where maybe an individual scoring a little more than any individual I think will do. I think U of H is going to have a very balanced attack this year. Defensive player of the year, I think a lot of guys could win that award. But ultimately, I think, maybe some of the voters are going to remember, hey, we let a U of H guy sweep this last year. If close, we might not vote for the U of H guy this year. So, I think Javier could end up putting up the kind of season where he should be in contention for defensive player of the year. I think maybe one of the guards could put themselves in contention for defensive player of the year, but I don't know. Would I bet against Hunter Dickinson sweeping both of those awards and them doing, hey, we're going to do that, let one guy sweep the awards this year? Maybe not. I mean, he's back. He could. I think that's is feasible. Again, lots of other good teams. Iowa State's got an entire team full of guys that probably should be candidates for defensive player of the year as well. So.
There it is, Dustin pumping up Iowa State. Look, he's been retired.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
Newcomer.
He's been retired one episode.
Yeah. Newcomer of the year, I think Milas Uzan could be in contention for that, but I don't know if he's going to play as big enough a role to win that award. Freshman, again, I don't think any freshmen are going to play. I love Mercy Miller. I don't think he's going to play enough minutes to win Freshman of the Year. Most improved, again, all your starters are guys that were already starters in the Big 12 last year, so I think it's harder to really have that most improved kind of performance. I think usually most improved is a guy that goes from a bit role to being a starter, and I don't think U of H has that guy this year. Honestly, the thing that makes me the least comfortable with my pick is something that Sam said towards the end there, which is Terrence Arsenault was sixth man of the year. I think I really like Terrence Arsenault for sixth man of the year. If he's not starting, which again, and if he's not, whoever else is not starting because Terrence Arsenault is, whoever he is kind of coming out of that starting lineup. You've got 6 guys that are just so good that it's hard to think that one might not win sixth man of the year. But I don't know. It just felt like that was the only category where I really felt good. That again, it just not that U of H won't have players that are fully deserving of player of the year, defensive player of the year, but I just think it's going to get hard to get picked in a conference as busy with as many national title contending type teams as the Big 12 is going to have.
I think that's fair. So let's talk women's basketball. How's that sound, gentlemen?
Let's do it.
All right. Last year we asked, will Houston finish in the top 10 in the Big 12 standings? Dustin said no. Sam and I said yes, which means Dustin was correct because the Cougs finished in a 3-way tie for 11th. I got to be honest, I'm not sure what gave me a lot of that hope last year. I guess I was on the hopium. So this year the question is, will U of H finish at least one game ahead of at least 3 teams in the Big 12 standings? And my answer was we will not finish ahead of 3 teams. I just don't see how it happens. You return some talent, but I just don't see it winning games. This is kind of the opposite of what I said earlier. I don't bet against Kelvin Sampson. You got to show it to me at this point when it comes to the women's basketball team. The teams coming in aren't going to be worse than you were last year. As just kind of a general rule, the league's getting tougher, or it's remaining the same, and you just didn't look very good last year. It's the transfers that have come in haven't been, blow me away. Oh my God, this person averaged 30 at a school and that was in the NCAA tournament last year. It's like, oh, okay, that should replace what we lost, but I don't know if it improves it a ton. So we finished near the bottom last year, didn't get better on paper. Plus, like I said, we added some pretty good teams to the conference. So Sam, what do you got?
I actually originally started answering this yes, but the more I looked at the roster, no, I will be answering no to this question. Layla Blair is a program great, and I have nothing bad to say about her, but it's a team game. And other than Malia Johnson and maybe a couple of your incoming transfers, Aaliyah Love and Kateri Poole, I don't think there's anything close to an adequate supporting cast around Blair to make me feel comfortable predicting this program would finish one game ahead of that many teams in the end of year standings. We'll gladly be proven wrong at everything here I picked negatively, but I mean, Huey's teams over the last 9 years of us doing the podcast have sometimes surprised me, but I don't know, guys. I think on the balance, this is a worse roster than last year's in a league that's certainly no less difficult than it was last year. So I'm with you, Bobby. It's a no. Dustin, make the case for us, whether genuine or part of the bit.
I did not realize what an edgelord I was being with all of my picks when I went and threw in my picks today, because I had U of H finishing at least one game ahead of at least 3 teams in the Big 12 standings.
You were right last year. What are you doing? Weren't you? Yeah, you were the only one of us that actually got it. Oh, sorry.
It is literally the only question last year that I was right and you both were wrong.
He said you were,
and you're like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm throwing caution to the wind.
I don't know why, but his reaction was so good. You were right. What are you doing?
Sorry. I'm derailing Dustin. I want to hear Dustin's genuine logic for this.
Me too. Let's hear the logic here.
Here we go. So you got to put at least 3 teams underneath you. U of H finished 2 games ahead of UCF last year, tied with 2 other teams. So you're literally 1 game away last year from this being true last year. And then U of H, or the Big 12, adds 3 good women's basketball teams. And they also had Arizona State, who was 16 points worse in the RPI last year than U of H was. Not a very good team. You talk about the roster. I mean, I think the best argument, I think you're right. Layla Blair maybe doesn't have enough supporting cast around her. I think Gigi Cook getting healthy after missing last year. She was a transfer. I think she was the transfer I was most excited about last year after her freshman year at Maryland. Getting her back alongside Layla Blair in the backcourt, I think maybe actually makes that maybe a little bit better than we're thinking. Kateri Poole, I think the same. Again, that's kind of a question because transferred a couple times. At some point you ask yourself, why does she keep transferring this much? But at some point she's a talented player, and I don't know. I feel like kind of my history of trying to guess how Ron Huey teams are going to do in a given year is usually, again, if you guess not making the NCAA tournament, you've been right every single year. But, in terms of like, are we kind of trending up or down this year? I feel like every year I think we're trending in a direction we do the opposite. So that is my reason why, honest to goodness, my answer before you guys said anything was true. U of H will finish at least 1 game ahead of at least 3 teams in the Big 12 standings. Again, 16-team conference, you can be pretty bad and still finish at least 1 game ahead of 3 teams.
That's fair. Yeah, that is why I started out as a yes on this, honestly.
Yeah, and one of my things when I kind of went back and thought about it, I definitely didn't start as a yes, but I was, as you kind of weigh everything, I kind of looked at it and I was like, the other thing with Huey's offense and defense is full court pressure. Sometimes you just have a game where you just suffocate the other team and the ball finally falls in the bucket for this team. That we saw it a couple of times last year, maybe not in Big 12 play, but there were games where
TCU and Big 12 play, I think they did that.
There were definitely games where if the buckets were even kind of falling for U of H, they were in games that they probably shouldn't have had any business being in because of the offense and the defensive pressure that those teams put up. So anything can happen when you're running the full court press like that, but I'm still a no.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we've got men's track and field. Last year, we asked, will U of H be a top 10 team at NCAA indoor or outdoor championships? All three of us said yes, they will. And I'm happy to report all three of us were correct because the men finished 6th at NCAA outdoors with 30.5 team points. So coming back this year with a lot of seniors graduating from that men's team, our question is the most convoluted question we had in bold predictions. We said U of H will have an athlete not named Louis Hinchliff or a relay finish on the podium at an NCAA championship, and or U of H will have a top 10 team finish at one of those championships. So they can either repeat last year's top 10 team finish or get anyone other than just Louis Hinchliff, who just, won the Natty, and that's got a little bit too easy maybe as a sophomore this year. If he's coming back, he's probably one of the favorites. So someone besides him or a relay or a top 10 finish. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I picked yes on this one. I'm comfortable even going as specific as saying I think the coming year's men's 4x1 relay with Hinchliff among that relay, but not the sole obviously participant, will be on the podium in about 10 months' time at the next NCAA Outdoors. Even before I think diving deeper into the other events, what UH has coming back, where I think they could do it, I think I'm as comfortable as I am calling my shot on that one. I mean, you're losing Sean Maswanyani and Davion Wilson, who are very big losses in their respective areas, sprinting and hurdling respectively, but those two wouldn't be the first really high level athletes that this program's had to replace. And I don't think I go as far as saying, they'll finish 6th again. I think you have to kind of rebuild some of that team depth, but I have a lot of confidence in this program. So I went yes on this one.
I also went yes, not because of podium finish, but only because of the top 10 finish. I think you do bring Louis back. So you would assume that you're going to get some good points there. You have, you kind of go and you look at the roster, and it's fairly young in terms of its some distance runners, some people who maybe aren't the sprinters that we always think of. So you could see the sprints maybe fall a little bit. You pick up some in a little bit longer distances, and you're finishing in the top 10. So that's why I went. It wasn't because I think we're not even necessarily getting a podium or anything like that, but I do see top 10 for the track team.
No one at home is going to believe us when they're watching this episode. I don't even know if y'all believe me, but I already had false as my answer on this one. So no worries. You're still not making me change any answers here. I don't know. I think Sam's 4x1 relay has a good chance, but there's a lot of really, really good 4x1 relays, and you only get one shot because there's no sprint relay at indoor championships. So your one shot is to do that at outdoors, which I think makes that a little bit, more questionable. And it's another one of those events where every year there's a bunch of teams with 4 good sprinters. UH obviously did it this year, but it's hard to do. It's hard to do year in and year out. As UH has found, as UH won it a couple of years in a row, and it just seemed like Houston's birthright to win the 4x1 every year. And then we've kind of found out over the last several years, no, that's actually really, really hard to do that, to get 4 sprinters, better than anybody else in the country's 4 sprinters. I think UH, we could see them doing well at like Big 12, because I think we're going to see a lot of, because there are some, like Andre Amita and stuff like that, some youngsters coming back who I think are going to do good. Some other guys who I think will be Big 12 good. I just don't think any of them are NCAA podium good. And I don't think the overall team strength is going to be quite enough this year to get a top 10 finish. So, I think it could be close. I mean, I wrote the question that way because I thought it would be close, but my gut tells me that not quite enough high-end talent for a podium finish, not quite enough overall team depth for a top 10 finish.
That's fair.
Yep.
Sticking with, are you going to do the women's track as well, or?
See you, bud. Go for it.
Gotcha. So we asked for women's track and field, a little bit less convoluted, I think a little more simpleness. We asked, will U of H win an event at both Big 12 indoors and outdoors?
Got to do last year first.
Oh, sorry. Jesus Christ. Last year we asked, will U of H score points at NCAA indoor or outdoor championships? Dustin and myself said no. Bobby said yes. Bobby was right, as the Cougars scored at both in the 4x4 relay, and Sydney Townsend individually finishing 5th in the 400 hurdles at NCAA outdoor. So we asked this year, a little bit less convoluted, like I incorrectly started a little bit ago. Will U of H win an event at both the Big 12 indoor and outdoor championships? I said true on this one. I'm basing it on two things, one specific, one general. I think the development record we're starting to see with Carl Lewis now having a few seasons under his belt as head coach. And I think more specifically, Michaela Mouton, I think is a level of athlete we saw this season, her first season, capable of winning an event at both. Just the 400. Michaela Mouton in the 400 at indoor and outdoor, to me, was enough reason to pick yes and not think very much about it. Bobby?
Yeah, I went yes here as well. I wish I had, a ton of insight here and things like that. A real vibes pick for me here. It just
have some vibes picks.
It feels like the team is trending in the right direction, and part of trending in the right direction is hitting this goal. So, like I said, not going to dive too deep into it. It's just I saw it. I was like, yeah, why wouldn't they? And it was almost instantaneous for me to like even think about it. Not that it was like an easy pick, but it was just like I saw it and I was like, yeah, like I was almost like, yeah, why wouldn't they? And then the more I thought about it, the more I kind of questioned myself a little bit, but I'm sticking with my first gut feeling that it just feels like this team is progressing the right way.
Again, apparently we did not need to do our little let's make sure no one picks the same thing, because I actually put false on this one as well. Just again, you look at who's coming back, because I believe I want to say, I could be wrong, the only events Houston won where they won the 4x4 relay, both Big 12 championships.
Correct. Yeah.
I believe those are the only Big 12 events that they won. And then again, you lose 3 out of 4 because 3 out of 4 were seniors in your 4x4 relay. So yeah, I think Michaela Mouton is a great athlete. The only other female Cougar who finished in the top 100 nationally in any event this year was Miracle Thompson in the short hurdles. So I think if it's not Mouton, then you're ever gonna have a hard time getting that from your returning depth. We haven't seen this women's team ever recruit at quite the level that the men's team has, or again, development, yes, but I don't think we've obviously not seen the same level of success from the women that we've seen from the men in track and field. So I think Michaela Mouton is great. I think asking her to make sure she wins, not just like, because again, you can be a great athlete, have a heck of a year, and finish 2nd or 3rd at Big 12 championships and have that be absolutely not a shameful finish at all. So I think asking essentially Michaela Mouton, maybe alone, unless we get a really impressive newcomer or someone makes a huge jump, to try to win an event at two different championships, I think is a lot. So that's why I went with false on this one.
I mean, just to add, could have a transfer come in. I said Sydney Townsend did not start her career at the University of Houston. Like there could be an impact transfer we're not thinking about. That's my only other thought.
No, absolutely. For putting false on both the men's and the women's here, I'm putting false with the fingers crossed that there will be a transfer who comes in and makes me look very silly.
All right.
You're up for swim dive.
Do you since I normally do golf's the next 2. Do you want to do swim and dive, and I can do golf?
I'll jump you in line and do swim dive.
Yeah.
So you can we'll let you do both golfs to make up for here. So last year in swim dive, we asked, will Houston have over or under 1.5 athletes qualified for NCAA national championships? We all 3 of us said under, to our great shame. One of only 3 questions that all 3 of us got wrong. Because the Cougars, in fact, qualified 3 athletes for nationals: Henrietta Fongley in the pool, and then Chase Ferris and Michelle McLeod as divers all qualified. So the Cougs got 3 there. Well done by those Cougs this year. This year we had a different question. We asked, will U of H finish in the top 2 at Big 12 championships? Of course, the Cougs did finish number 2 this past season, and the team that finished in front of them left, but with some teams coming in, maybe a tougher call here. So, Bobby, where did you go on swimming, diving, finishing top 2 at Big 12 championships?
Yeah, I was a little skeptical on this one. I kind of went back and forth, was kind of like, well, I don't know, but I don't know why, again, but I couldn't help but remember it being a very top-heavy program this year, especially with the 3 qualifiers, and that really stuck in my head. But as I dove more and more into the results, the more I realized that this team did a good job of just kind of finishing with solid point totals. And a lot of that was underclassmen. So, they underclassmen took a good amount of points. So can they improve? I think so, and I think they can finish in the top 2. Sam?
I said no on this one. No negativity at all about the state of the program. I think Tanika Jameson has done a fantastic job here. And I think for the conference generally, losing UT Austin, a superpower in the sport, makes that question of who will actually win this league so much more interesting, because it was just kind of, all right, UT's going to finish first, and now 2 through whatever, like, see, be the best you can be. But I think also, you have the arrival of the 3 schools from the former Pac-12 who sponsor the sport, the 2 Arizona schools in Utah. They competed in a much tougher top to bottom league. And I think we'll come in this league and be closer to that top tier of teams than they were in the Pac-12. U of H also loses Chase Ferris, who Dustin mentioned a bit ago, to graduation. But like Bobby said, it's a very balanced roster. I think this is more of a pick about how close I think it's going to be in the top 4 or 5 places at the championship and the volatility of that versus any negativity. So I was a no here.
Yeah, I think the best argument for U of H doing this is kind of what Bobby said. It's just Tanika Jameson has shown a really impressive job of bringing in a bunch of youngsters every year and having the overall program depth to score points at events like conference championships. And that's how, again, last year, I remember like doing the recap of swimming and diving and like trying to look for individuals who like finished on the podium and be like, and then they also look up and you finish in second place, and you get, just because at every event Houston did at least pretty good and had a lot of athletes, and in a lot of cases underclassmen who are already coming in and at least scoring some points at Big 12 championships. However, I ended up being a false on this one as well, even though the one team, again, like we said, the one team that finished ahead of them left, but also Houston finished only a very, very narrow sliver ahead of TCU. Arizona State was a top 25 team this year. And you look at the Pac-12 championships, they didn't finish like miles ahead of Utah and Arizona. So kind of like Sam said, I expect maybe at least 2, if not all 3 of those newcomers in the conference to compete near the top of the conference. I think TCU will be right there. Cincinnati wasn't far off from Houston's pace at Big 12 championships last year as well. So I think UH has a really good chance to do it. I wouldn't want to bet a lot of money against them doing it for all the reasons I said up top. But for me, it's just kind of a crowded field where, I think U of H could have a really good season and still finish, third at Big 12 championship. So false on this one for me as well.
All right.
Do some golf.
Yeah, let's start with women's golf. Last year, the question was, will a UH individual team qualify for nationals? All 3 of us said no, and that was correct. Now, both U of H as a team and Moa Saviniskold as an individual finished 1 stroke off the cut to make the national championship, which was absolutely heartbreaking. So the question this year was, will the Cougars finish top 3 in the Big 12 or make it to the national championship? Did I read that right? Yep.
Yes.
Or advance from the regionals to the championships.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm going with a resounding yes. They were 1 bad round last year from doing just that. And that's winning from finishing in the top 3 at the Big 12 championships. 1 bad round from it. 1 stroke away from making it to the NCAA tournament. So the teams coming in, they don't scare me a ton. There's some decent golf teams in there, but they're probably at best at the level U of H is currently at. And the good teams, kind of, we lost Texas. We lost some, Oklahoma wasn't like this world beater. But yeah, your top 4 players from the team last year, you keep almost your entire team. Moa Saviniskold, Maylin Kim, Hyunji Kang, and Alexa Saldana. They all return. That's 4 of your top 5 players. Ellen Yates comes back as well as a sophomore. She got a decent amount of exposure last year in some tournaments. Played pretty well, was your 6th best player. She's going to step up into your top 5. So I have a lot of confidence that this team is just going to keep taking a step forward. It was a young team last year. We were excited about how young they were and the progress that they're going to make. And so I do see it happening, and this could be a good year for the Houston Cougar women's golf program. Sam?
It's a regretful no, but one I still feel good about the answer to. If this was top 4, I'd probably answer this differently. I think this will still be a good, easily clearing the bar of NCAA postseason kind of team, but I think, like I said, for the swim and dive question, if the margins at the top of the championship, I think are going to be super slim. It is actually working against me, kind of like you said, Bobby. I don't think any of the 3 incoming schools that sponsor women's golf were that great in the Pac-12. Certainly not better than U of H definitively. I think my answer is just about the volatility of golf, the volatility of a bunch of really close matched teams at a 3-day event, as opposed to any kind of lack of confidence in the returning talent or the program generally. Dustin?
I guess we had some different scouting notes that we went over, because unless I'm looking at something wrong, the WGCA coaches poll at the end of last season had Arizona State number 13 and Arizona number 17, which seems like a couple of pretty good teams coming into the conference for me. But I actually believe, despite my sarcasm there, I actually said true on this one, and as I get to pick my own truth. And I kind of went false at first because it's such a high bar. And I think the reason I was false was I don't know that I'm over 50% for either half of the question. I don't know that I'm over 50% that they'll finish top 3 at Big 12 championships. Yeah, we saw them, second place behind a dominant UT Austin team this past year for 2 rounds, but then fell to 6th. And then, like I said, you add a couple of Arizona schools that look pretty good, at least unless I'm wildly misreading things. So again, I think UVH has a chance to finish top 3 at Big 12. Don't know that I would, if it was just that question, I don't know if I'd pick it. And then the other half of that, or will U of H advance from NCAA regionals to NCAA championships? And again, U of H has never done that. So on some level, I'm kind of like, well, I can't say yes to that individual question, because show me it the first time before I'm going to expect that you're going to do that. On the other hand, they missed NCAA championships by 1 stroke. And I think Bobby makes a really good argument that this team should be better than last year's team. Now, U of H has been close before and looked like they had a better team going into the next year, but I'm living in the here and now. I give U of H a 35% chance to do one or the other, and that means combined there's a 70% chance that they'll do at least one of them, or something like that. My mouth's probably not. We got to do maybe the ands and the neithers, but whatever. Either way, I don't know if I'd pick either individually, but I'm going to say yes, U of H will do one or the other, either finish top 3 or make it to NCAA championships.
Did Sam go? I'm sorry. I was
I
looking up the rankings all of a sudden. Duh. Of course Sam did. You went, Dustin. My bad, guys. I was looking up the rankings you were talking about. I was like, hey, wait a minute. Did I miss something? So let's move on to the men. Sorry about that, guys. The question last year was, will U of H finish top 10 at the Big 12 championships? All 3 of us said yes, and the Cougars did it. They tied for 6th with Texas Tech. So we were correct. And then this year, the question was, will the Cougar men's golf team finish top 6 at Big 12 championships and advance to an NCAA regional? Now, I will say this was probably the toughest question for me this year, because this is about where I think U of H is going to fit in. They're going to probably finish top 6, 7 of the Big 12, and I think this team can advance to an NCAA regional. I think that's kind of the top where they're going to be. Maybe they'll get a little bit better than that, but maybe they finish top 4, top 5 at Big 12 championships. But I could also see them finishing 7th, 8th, and just missing a regional, being one of the first teams that doesn't make it into a regional, kind of the first 4 out. I could see them being in that range as well. So it was really tough. But I said no. You lose Santiago de la Fuente, who kind of carried the team the last couple of years. That is obviously going to be a big loss. And so just kind of based on that, losing him and then that being right about where I think we're going to finish, I do see the chances of finishing worse is than I think is higher than the chance of us finishing 2nd or 3rd in the conference.
I said no for this one. With all respect to the Cougar men's golf program, I didn't really think too hard about it. Assuming U of H does not find Santiago de la Fuente another year of eligibility magically in the couch cushions, I can't confidently predict U of H will essentially equal their Big 12 championship performance from this past season without Santiago de la Fuente. You also lose one of your other top 3 finishers of the last Big 12 championship, Austin Riley, to graduation as well. Not trying to be doom and gloom, but I try to make at least some of these predictions with some basis in proven returning production. I don't think there is enough of that here for me to answer in the affirmative. Dustin?
All right, you guys are actually going to make me change an answer here. So I'm staying with what I said I was going to do it. So I will do it. So I'll switch from false to true on this one. And I think the best argument for U of H finishing top 6 at Big 12 championships and advancing to NCAA regionals is, I think, kind of what Bobby was saying at the top there, which is just that Jonathan Dismuke has shown that, he hasn't shown that he can get U of H back to its former glory by any stretch. He hasn't shown that he can get U of H to nationals by any stretch. But, being top 6 in a conference, getting to L regional, where the NCAA, getting to a regional, there's more teams that go to regionals in golf than 64. So it's just a little bit easier to get into than other sports that you may be thinking of that have regionals. So I think, probably the harder half of that is going to be the first half, the finishing top 6 at Big 12 championships. But I don't know that I really look at the roster and am overcome with confidence losing De La Fuente and Riley, like you said, but I have enough faith in Dismuke that he's shown that he'll keep this program at a respectable level, and I think respectable means finishing top 6 and making a regional.
Now we'll keep us moving and talk about Cougar tennis here, if you guys don't mind. We asked last year, will U of H at any point beat a Big 12 team other than Kansas State? Dustin and I said no. Bobby, I think just a vibes pick if I had to guess, said yes. Yeah. Dustin and I were correct. The Cougars went 0-13 in Big 12 play, including a 4-1 loss to Kansas State, the team that we deemed bad enough not to include here, and did end up being one of your better results, unfortunately. Kind of tells you the season that program had. So we asked this year, will U of H win 4 matches or more, at least 4, in Big 12 play? I said true to this one. Call it me being swept up in optimism at the hire of Kat Adamovich, but I think this new look program can do it. This is an almost completely different roster than the one that didn't win a single Big 12 match last year. You have 4 players arriving from Grand Canyon, Adamovich's last coaching stop, which I think will immediately raise the floor here. I think none more so than Santos Trumbaja. She was the 3-time first-team all-WAC selection at Grand Canyon, was 40-4 in singles the last 2 seasons, I believe, set the program's Division I record for singles wins in a year, in addition to a trio of, I think, really strong freshmen for the past season at GCU, Eva Seppa, Valeria Croatina, and Elizaveta Morosova. I'm comfortable saying any of those 4 athletes right there, any of them, would have been better than the best singles player on last year's team. That's the level of, I think, improvement here. We'll say all those players I just mentioned are going against a much tougher level of competition in the Big 12 versus the WAC, which is why I am not trying to sell you 2 guys and the listeners on this being an NCAA tournament team just yet. But I think 4 or more wins in Big 12 play is doable. And hey, if you're listening, you want to help make U of H respectable Big 12 tennis a reality, buy some Third Ward Racket Club gear. Bobby, what's your answer to this? Sorry.
I say no. I understand the roster is better. I understand that, these players are better than what we had last year, but to go from 0 to 4, it feels like a lot no matter how good the roster is. The facilities, as we know, are behind. This is a big rebuild for Kat Adamovich, and going from 0 to 4 that quickly when you have teams like Oklahoma State in your conference, it just feels very, very difficult. So I went with no.
Yeah, I went with false on this one as well. Not for lack of enthusiasm for the Third Ward Racket Club or Kat Adamovich's tenure as UH.
How dare you?
Or anything like that. I just got my Third Ward Racket Club stickers today, so I'm very excited. I'm on the train for sure for the long haul. However, it does feel like, kind of like Bobby said, a little bit of a lot to expect in year 1 with still, got some freshmen coming in. So still kind of a young roster. And again, some, all 4 schools coming in were at least top 75 last year. The Arizonas were in the top 40. Utah was a top 50 team. So some pretty good schools coming in. And there continues to be just not a whole lot of kind of like low-hanging fruit for Houston to beat up on. We thought Kansas State was going to be that team. Kansas State ended up being a top 75 team this year, and even we thought that was going to be maybe one of the more beatable teams.
We were the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, Houston sometimes, yeah. When you look around the table and you don't see the sucker, you are the sucker. Yeah, no. I think it's a long way to go. And again, I like where this program is going. I have a feeling I'm going to be happy to look back and be wrong about this one at the end of the year. But going all the way from winless to winning essentially a third of your Big 12 games just feels like a lot. It feels like a lot happened, but I'm going to be a little bit as rough as this tennis program has been. I'm too excited about it.
It's fair.
All right, Bobby, you want to go ahead and pick your bat and ball sport of choice, and I'll take the other.
I will do baseball. So last year, the question is the same one we've probably asked for 8 years in a row. Will U of H make a regional? All of us said no, and unfortunately, all of us were correct on that one. If there's one thing the three of us will agree on, it is a love of Cougar baseball and a belief in Cougar baseball nobody else in this world has. But this year, the question is, will U of H finish at least one game ahead of at least three teams in the Big 12 standings? And I said no. Again, pretty much a vibes pick here. Nothing about this team has me excited thinking that they are going to take the next step, that we are going to see something different than what we have seen the last 5 seasons, to believe that this team is going to finish ahead of pretty much anybody. I mean, we won 1 or 2 series last year. I meant to write this down, but in Big 12 play, I know we won the opener, but yeah, that was it.
And that was it. Yeah, we won the opener.
Everyone else, we at best we went 1-3 against. I don't see how you can have that kind of performance and then go, oh yeah, they're going to be better than a bunch of other teams, especially ones coming in. I don't see it. So, Sam?
I'm also a no. This program is losing a number of good key contributors from this year's team. Top recruiter, assistant Ross Kivett. Even with Kivett and those guys, you were pretty doggone uncompetitive in the Big 12. A conference that is better than the AAC, but also wasn't a brutal gauntlet like a lot of the other sports we've talked about tonight. I'm really at the point where I will believe it when I see it from this program, and I haven't seen it remotely enough to give the optimistic prediction here. Dustin?
All right, so I'm glad we get at least 2 sports that I'm going to change my answer because I said I would. So I will change my answer here for Cougar baseball and say yes, they will finish at least one game ahead of at least 3 teams in the Big 12 standings. In fact, I think both of the ones that I changed my answer, it was I don't know. Anyway, not important. So you look at last year, U of H finished ahead of BYU in the standings, finished a little bit behind Baylor, but did win the series against them, finished ahead of Baylor in the RPI for whatever that's worth. You look at the schools coming in, Arizona, good team last year, but Arizona State, Utah, not really, NCAA regional at large type of teams last year. And kind of like Sam said, I don't think the baseball conference was quite the gauntlet that some of the other sports were. Men's basketball, you're just not seeing that type of level of competition throughout the conference. I don't think so. It takes a less good team to finish, a few teams from the bottom than it might in some other sports. The reason I was a false originally is, again, kind of like looking at the roster for next year, specifically looking at the pitching staff for next year and just go, we haven't been very good at pitching in a while. Who's going to pitch for us? That's
talking yourself into a JUCO reliever with a 3.8 ERA, but he struck out a lot of guys.
That's the question. So, looking at the lineup, Houston loses a lot of guys from the lineup as well. There's not really a ton of returning talent in the lineup, but I do like some of the transfers that UH has brought in. Aaron Lugo from Texas State, Gavin Miller from Auburn, Jake Tatum and Malachi Lott for Sam Houston. I think those could be some of the building blocks of a pretty respectable lineup here, but yeah, so my argument is the lineup will be good enough based on some of the transfers we got coming in, and Woody Williams is a really good pitching coach who is going to make chicken salad out of some lesser parts, to quote a former U of H football coach, and so that's my argument that Cougar baseball at least one game ahead of at least 1-3 against at least 3 teams in the Big 12 standings.
Hey, Dustin, you said a good lineup in questionable pitching. That should only lead us to
Cougar softball. Hey, so our question last year for Cougar softball was, will U of H do better or worse than their 2023 run differential, which was negative 48 runs over the course of the season? Guys, I know you already know the ending here because I texted you because I couldn't help myself. I was so sure when I was looking up the answers this morning. I'm like, well, worse than negative 48. We probably were negative 100. Absolutely, we did worse. And then I looked at the numbers. U of H was +4 in run differential over the course of the season this year in Cougar softball, if you can believe that. So looked back at the I looked at our offensive stats. We were +4. I looked at our pitching stats versus opponents. We were +4 just to double check because it seemed that improbable. And then looked back at our schedule and remembered we put up a bunch of 15 and 20 run performances against terrible teams.
Commerce.
In A&M Commerce. Yeah, we played an entire weekend series against A&M Commerce and just gobbled up all of those cupcakes while we had them there. So that was how last year went. It was one of only 3 questions that none of the 3 of us got right, but I don't really feel too bad about that. This year, our question, as long as Chris Investley is the coach in light of our reporting from the last several months on the state of the softball program, we didn't really feel like it was appropriate for us to even ask results on the field based questions about this team, as long as she is still running the program. So our only question for Cougar softball is, will U of H do the right thing and fire Kristen Vesley within the next 12 months? And guys, I'm not going to throw it to you and wait and debate. This is the one question. True. I believe that that's going to happen. Fingers crossed. It may even happen before the season starts. We'll see. But worst case scenario, it's going to be impossible to justify keeping her around by the end of next season. So this is the one question I didn't feel like was a very hard question in terms of figuring out how to answer it. But yeah, I mean, I think the fact that this is our question is not because this is a hard question, or it's definitely not, should this even be a hard question? It is just a commentary that, hey, we don't really think it's even appropriate to be looking at on the field results until someone else is running this program.
Yeah, I am also a true on that one. Call it a gut feeling. Bobby?
Yeah, I would say true as well. Even if not for our reporting and everything we talked about, she's only got a year left on her contract, and we're not a good softball program. So if for nothing else, it should be for that. Even if you do somehow overlook all of our reporting and you don't believe it or anything like that, like, even if that's the case, she should be gone because it's not a very good softball team.
Yeah. And Chris Pesman's not the athletic director, so.
Yep.
Hey. All right. I think that is where we're going to end it. So even though I got real emotional about my last outro last week, I think I'm going to get one more.
You're going to do it again?
I'm just going to run and take it while I can, before anyone tells me not to. Ask for forgiveness rather than permission type of situation. And as I will, on our way out here, I will say that if you enjoy the Scott and One podcast, if you enjoy the content that we put out on a weekly basis throughout the year, covering Houston Cougar athletics, and if you are at a point in your life where you feel like $5 a month is not going to be a burden to you, we would love for you to go to patreon.com/shpodcast. Sign up to be a Scott and One podcast patron, like the many, many wonderful folks who are already doing that, who have our eternal thanks, of course. If you want to reach out and contact us, you can email us, shpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at shpodcast. If you're feeling crazy, you can blue sky us at podcast.bsky.social. That's it for us. If you made it all the way to the end, you are a rock star. And as always,
go Cougs.